"Don't get in that car." The voice stopped Richard Callahan 3 steps from the curb. He had been mid-stride, briefcase in hand, already forming the first thought of the evening ahead. The verdict had come in at 11:40 that morning. The celebration dinner was booked for 8. His driver was holding the rear door of the Blue Town car open, with the patient stillness of a man who had done this 1,000 times, and Richard had been one breath from stepping into the quiet of the back seat and leaving the courthouse entirely behind him. He stopped. The boy was standing at the base of the steps with both arms raised, palms out, planted directly in the path between Richard and the curb. He was perhaps 6. He wore a red hoodie 2 sizes too large, the cuffs rolled back 4 times and still hanging past his knuckles. His sneakers were gray canvas with a broken left lace knotted twice. There was a thin scar through his left eyebrow, the healed kind that comes from a fall and not from anything worse. And his eyes were locked on Richard's with a steadiness that did not match his size at all. A court officer had started toward them from the side. Richard raised one finger. The officer paused. Richard crouched. His knee met the cold stone of the step, and he was aware distantly of the cluster of reporters still 40 feet back who had been covering the zoning case. He set his briefcase down. He brought his eyes level with the boys. "Tell me your name first," he said. "Micah." "Micah, I'm listening. Tell me what you saw." Micah told him. He told him in the direct, unhurried way children tell things when they have been carrying them too long and have finally found someone willing to hold still. 2 nights ago, Sunday night, he had been in the covered parking structure on Garfield Street because the shelter had been over capacity and he and his grandmother had found a dry corner on the 2nd level. A man had come at 20 past 10, blue coveralls. A patch on the chest pocket, round, red and white, 2 letters, P and R. He had been on his phone when he crouched beside the blue car with the silver R on the back trunk lid, and Micah had not moved from behind the concrete pillar because his grandmother had taught him that men doing things alone in parking structures at night were not men you stepped in front of. Richard listened to all of this without looking away. Then he said, "What did he say on the phone?" Micah pressed the knotted end of his broken shoelace between his fingers, the way a person turns a coin when retrieving something precise. He said it was ready. He said Tuesday afternoon. He said the R car in the lot off Garfield. A pause. And he said the name of the person who hired him. "What name?" Micah's brow folded. "It started like a G, not Grayson, more like Garrett or Gareth. I couldn't hear the rest because a truck went by." Richard stood up. His driver, Lewis, was still holding the car door open. His hand rested on the frame in the patient, neutral way of a professional who had learned to wait. Richard looked at the car. He looked at Lewis. He looked at the courthouse steps rising behind him and the gray sky and this ordinary Tuesday afternoon that had stopped being ordinary 40 seconds ago. He reached for his phone. The call to 911 took less than a minute. Richard gave his name, the make and color of the vehicle, the plate number, the location, and the phrase credible information regarding an explosive device in 3 clean sentences. He was a man who had spent 40 years in conference rooms, where precision of language determined outcomes, and he applied it now without hesitation. He hung up. He looked at Lewis and told him quietly to step away from the car and move to the top of the steps. Lewis opened his mouth. Richard said it again. Lewis walked. Richard looked down at Micah, who was still exactly where he had planted himself, watching Richard with the grave patience of a child waiting to see whether an adult would hold. "You did the right thing," Richard said. "Come with me, up the steps, away from the car." He held out his hand. Micah looked at it the way a child looks at a hand that has been extended before and then taken back. Then he put his fingers into Richard's. They were cold, and the rolled cuff of the red hoodie came down over Richard's thumb. They walked up the steps together. Richard did not run. He was aware that running would frighten the boy, and the boy had already been carrying enough for one day. The bomb squad arrived in 8 minutes. Richard and Micah were standing against the 3rd column, when the black tactical vehicle came up at an angle and stopped in the middle of the street. 3 officers in heavy gear were out before the doors finished swinging. A 4th carried an articulated mirror on a long pole, moving with a particular economy of motion that Richard recognized immediately as people who had done this before and were not thrilled or frightened by any version of it. A uniformed officer jogged up the steps and took Richard and Micah through the courthouse to a side courtyard used for deliveries, a rectangle of cracked pavement, 1 rusted bench, a padlocked storage cage, and a chain-link gate opening onto an alley. Richard sat on the bench. He lifted Micah up beside him. The boy's feet did not reach the ground. "Are you hungry?" Richard asked. Micah shook his head, then nodded, then looked at the gate. My grandma, he said. She doesn't know where I am. Where is she? At the Mercy House shelter. On Clement. She's sick. He said it the way a child says a fact they have been carrying alone, not for sympathy, simply because it is true. She didn't know I came here. I told the lady at the front desk I was going to the library. What's wrong with her? Her lungs, since before Christmas. The nurse said there's a name for it, but I can't remember the whole word. She coughs at night, and it sounds different than a regular cough. Richard said nothing for a moment. He thought about a Tuesday in October, 8 months back, Michigan Avenue in a hard rain, and a woman at a bus stop with a paper grocery bag coming apart in the wet. He had not thought about that Tuesday in a long time. A detective named Caruso came through the gate. He was a compact man in his mid-50s, jacket open, notebook out, who crouched in front of Micah the way someone crouches when they have decided not to make themselves tall. Hey, Micah. My name's Detective Caruso. Can I ask you some questions? Yes, sir. You're very polite. Who taught you that? My grandma. Caruso wrote it down. His pen slowed on the word grandma in the way a pen slows when a person is managing something they do not intend to show on their face. Tell me more about the man you saw, Micah. Take whatever time you need. Micah told him everything he had told Richard and added 3 more details. The man had a ring on his right hand, silver, flat, square, not a wedding ring. He had arrived in a gray pickup truck with a dent in the left rear panel. And before he crouched beside the car, he had said one more thing into his phone, not even going to know what hit him. Caruso wrote without looking down at his notebook, the practiced stillness of a detective who has learned that witnesses talk better when they don't feel observed. Micah, Caruso said carefully, the name, the person paying him. You said Garrett or Gareth. I think Gareth. The beginning was clear. The truck went by before I heard the end. Richard's right hand, resting beside him on the bench, contracted. He felt his own knuckles go tight before he understood why. Gareth. Gareth Sloan, Vice President of Operations, 14 years at Callahan Development Group. The man who had sat across from Richard at dinner 2 months ago and said with every appearance of sincerity that he did not know what he would do if the company ever restructured. The man who had helped Richard design the scope of the internal financial review that was set to begin next Thursday. Next Thursday. Caruso had stopped writing. He was watching Richard. Keep going, Richard said. His voice came out rougher than he intended. Ask him the rest. He looked at Micah and smiled. Small, deliberate, real. You're doing great. Tell him everything. Micah told him everything. He told Caruso about the third parking spot from the stairwell, the flickering east side light that cycled every 4 seconds because he had counted it, the man arriving alone and leaving alone without looking back. And then he described the ring again, and this time he picked up Caruso's pen and drew its face on the back of a receipt from the detective's jacket pocket. A flat compass rose 8 points inside a square bezel. Caruso looked at the drawing for 3 seconds. Then, he looked at Richard. He excused himself and walked to the chain-link gate, where a man in a dark jacket had appeared without announcement. They spoke with their backs half-turned. The man in the dark jacket looked at his phone, then at Micah, then stepped back through the gate and was gone. Caruso came back. Mr. Callahan, he said quietly. The device is real. The squad confirmed it 2 minutes ago. Magnetic charge on the chassis, rear driver's side. Remote detonator. It's being neutralized now. The vehicle's a total loss, but the device is intact for evidence. He paused. A remote detonator means it wasn't wired to ignition. It was going to go off when someone with a finger on a button decided, which means someone was watching. Was watching, present tense, when you walked out of that courthouse. Richard processed this in the part of his mind that had spent 4 decades remaining level under conditions designed to make a person tilt. My security and operations leadership, he said before Caruso asked. Gareth Sloan approves all executive vehicle scheduling. He would have known exactly where that car was Sunday night and exactly when the lot would be empty. Has he tried to reach you today? Richard looked at his phone. 12 missed calls, 9 from a contact labeled GS Work. Yeah, Richard said. Caruso nodded slowly, the way a person nods when a suspicion has been confirmed and they find no satisfaction in it. I'm going to ask you not to return those calls until we have someone with you. Not your corporate security, not anyone who reports to him. Is there someone you trust completely outside the company? My personal attorney, Richard said, Caroline Yates, estate work only, no connection to the company. Call her, use my phone. Caroline Yates answered on the second ring. When Richard said the words device under my car, she did not gasp and she did not interrupt. She said, tell me exactly where you are. I'll be there in 25 minutes. Don't speak to anyone from the company. Don't call back whatever numbers missed you." She hung up before he could respond. Richard handed the phone back. His hand was steady. He was surprised by that. Micah had listened to all of it without pretending not to. He looked up at Richard. "Is the Gareth man going to know you're alive?" "Probably already knows," Richard said. "There are cameras everywhere." "Is he going to try again?" Richard looked at this boy in his oversized red hoodie, one lace knotted twice, feet hanging in the air, and he felt something he recognized as the weight of a promise that was true before he had even formed it. "No," he said. "Not if I have anything to say about it, and not if anyone in this courtyard has anything to say about it either." From 10 feet away, Detective Caruso did not look up from his notebook, but his pen stopped moving. After a moment, he said quietly, "That's right." Caroline Yates arrived in 22 minutes wearing a charcoal blazer, and the expression of a woman who had decided, long ago, that surprise was a luxury she could not afford. She took in the courtyard in the time it took to cross 5 steps. Richard on the bench, Micah beside him, Caruso at a respectful distance, the low echo of a controlled detonation still audible from the far side of the building. She looked at Micah first. "Hello, I'm Caroline. I'm Mr. Callahan's lawyer. What's your name?" "Micah." "That's a good name." She sat on his other side and did not open her bag. She turned toward Richard. "Tell me." He told her in the short, clean sentences she had trained him to use over 17 years of being his attorney. The boy on the steps, the 911 call, the bomb, confirmed real, the name that started with Gar. The 9 missed calls from Gareth Sloane's number on his phone. When he finished, Caroline was quiet for several seconds. "The internal financial review," she said. "Scheduled for Thursday. Who knew?" "Gareth helped me design the scope. I told him 10 days ago." 10 days. She said it to herself, assembling a sequence. "And you won this morning's case at 11:40. So he had 10 days to arrange it and 1 morning to execute. Your guard down, your attention on the verdict, moving without extra security because it was a celebration." She did not say it with emotion. She said it the way a person states a series of facts that were always going to resolve in this direction once you laid them in order. "How much?" Richard asked. "The review will tell us. But from the pattern," she paused. "Richard, how long has Gareth been with you?" 14 years. She nodded slowly. She had said something to Richard 3 years ago about Gareth's expense reporting that Richard had set aside. Because the numbers had not yet asked a question he couldn't answer. She did not say that now. Caroline did not spend words on outcomes she could not change. A federal agent arrived at 4:40. She introduced herself as Special Agent Dana Morse, showed her credentials, and then crouched in front of Micah with the easy directness of someone who had learned not to waste a witness's first impression. "Micah, I'm Dana. I work for the federal government, which means I'm going to help find the man who put something under Mr. Callahan's car, and the man who paid him. Detective Caruso tells me you've been an exceptional witness today. I'd like to ask a few more things, and then I want to make sure you get somewhere warm and your grandmother gets a phone call. Sound okay?" "Yes, ma'am." "Have you eaten today?" Micah's pause answered the question without words. Agent Morse stood, walked to the gate, spoke briefly to the officer outside, and came back. 4 minutes later, a paper bag came through. She brought it to the bench. "Turkey or peanut butter? I didn't know which, so I got both. There's an apple. Eat it whenever, my partner doesn't actually care." A small, careful smile crossed Micah's face, the first smile of the afternoon. He opened the bag and ate with the deliberate patience of a child who had learned that food should not be rushed, because food that is rushed is food that might not come again. Agent Morse pulled Richard and Caroline to the far corner of the courtyard. "The device configuration matches 4 other incidents tracked across 3 states over 14 months, she said. "Same trigger mechanism, almost certainly the same supply chain. The PR patch on the coveralls narrows it to 2 subcontracting outfits that run maintenance contracts in this district. We'll have a name within 2 hours." She let that settle. "The compass ring Micah drew is a known detail. We have a face file." "And Gareth Sloane," Richard said. "We've been investigating financial irregularities at Callahan Development for 9 months. We weren't yet certain which side of it you were on." She said it plainly, the way an honest person delivers something that will sting. "Your name was on a list of 3. Sloane's was on the same list. Tonight, you took yourself off it by calling 911 instead of getting in the car." Caroline said very quietly. "You might have shared that with me at some point, Dana." "I'm sharing it now, counselor." Richard leaned his shoulder against the courtyard wall. 14 years. Gareth, at his dinner table, 2 months ago. Gareth at his shoulder at a site walk in Phoenix last spring. Gareth saying, I don't know what I'd do without this company, with what had seemed at the time like loyalty, and now resolved into something else entirely. How much? Richard asked. We've traced 9 million across 19 months. He didn't act alone. There's a project manager in the mix we'll confirm by morning. The review you scheduled for Thursday would have found it in 4 to 6 weeks. He didn't have 4 to 6 weeks. So he tried to make himself the only person in the building who knew the full picture. By making sure I wasn't in the building anymore, Richard said. Yes. He looked across the courtyard at Micah, who was working through the peanut butter sandwich with both hands wrapped around it, feet still not reaching the ground. How long before Gareth knows I'm alive? He almost certainly already does. Local news ran the bomb squad footage at 4:15. Your name was in the Chiron for a minute. She checked her phone. My team moved on him at 4:53. He was in the elevator at the underground garage of your building with a carry-on bag. He asked for his lawyer before anyone said a word. Good, Richard said. The word came out clean and cold, and he did not apologize for it. Agent Morse looked at him for a beat. One more thing. Yes. The boy. Whatever you do for him, and I assume you're going to do something, do it right. Not for cameras. Not for a press release. That child was the only thing between you and a flag-draped casket. He deserves better than being made into a story. I know he does, Richard said. I know. The Mercy House shelter on Clement Street was a converted warehouse. 3 stories, narrow windows, a lobby that smelled like industrial cleaner, and beneath it the particular smell of too many people sharing too little space with too much dignity. A hand-painted mural ran along the entry hallway. A sun, trees, words in several languages that all meant something like welcome. It was 6:15 when Caroline's car pulled to the curb. Richard had changed out of the Navy suit. It was being held as evidence, and was wearing a plain charcoal sweater and dark slacks that Caroline had bought at a department store on the way. He felt, in borrowed clothes, like a man who had been handed his life back on a temporary basis and had not yet read the conditions. Micah sat in the back seat beside him, still in the red hoodie. A nurse at the courthouse had cleaned a smudge of concrete dust from his cheek with a warm cloth while he sat very still and pretended not to enjoy the warmth. That's the window, Micah said, pointing to the second floor, left side. A yellow curtain, the kind that gets donated because no one else wants it, and so it goes somewhere that will accept anything. Grandma likes it because she can see the tree. Richard looked at the tree, a young oak in a concrete planter, half its branches bare. Micah, Caroline said from the front seat, we're going in together. We're not going to take your grandmother anywhere she doesn't want to go. We're going to ask her what she wants. Okay, then quietly. She'll say no first. She always says no first when she thinks someone wants something back from her. That's all right, Richard said. We'll wait. The shelter director was a woman named Mrs. Okafor, tall, in her 60s, reading glasses on a beaded chain, a cardigan the color of old brick. She met them in the front office and looked at Micah before she looked at anyone else. Baby, I got 4 calls from the library saying you weren't there. Your grandmother's been asking. She looked at Caroline. Her eyes moved to Richard. She waited. Caroline explained what had happened in 2 clean minutes. Mrs. Okafor listened without interrupting. When Caroline finished, Mrs. Okafor took her glasses off and pressed 3 fingers flat against the bridge of her nose. Lord, she said softly. Yes, Caroline said. Mrs. Okafor looked at Richard with the direct gaze of a woman who had been evaluating people walking through this door for many years. Mr. Callahan, you are not the first person with money who has come into this building wanting to fix something. So before we go upstairs, I need to say one thing. She said it the way a person says something they have been waiting a long time to be in a position to say. Estelle Gaines has been with us for 11 weeks. She came to us because her landlord raised her rent by $360 in January. 1 letter, 12 days notice, no negotiation. She is 71 years old. She worked 33 years for the Postal Service. She raised this child from the time he was 3, after her daughter died. She has pulmonary fibrosis. She has been refusing the hospital because she believes that if she goes, the state will separate her from Micah. Do you understand what I am telling you? Yeah, Richard said. She will not be saved. If you walk into that room like a man who has arrived to handle her situation, she will turn her face to the wall. If you walk in like a man who owes her something, she might listen. Richard was quiet for a moment. I do owe her something, he said, more than she knows yet. Mrs. Okafor studied him for a long moment. Then she said, come on then. Estelle Gaines was sitting up in the cot nearest the window, a wool shawl over a flannel nightgown, a paperback face down on the blanket beside her. Her hair was silver at the temples, darker at the crown, pulled back with a plain cloth band. Her hands, folded in her lap, were the hands of a woman who had worked with them her whole life and knew exactly what they were worth. She saw Micah in the doorway, her whole face changed. "Baby," she said. Micah crossed the room and put his face into her shoulder, and she held him without moving otherwise, her eyes going over his head to Richard standing near the door. Clear eyes, not afraid, not surprised, measuring. "You'd be the man my grandson went to warn," she said. "Yes, ma'am," Richard said. "Come sit down then. I don't have much time before I need to rest." There was no chair nearby. Richard found a low wooden footstool near the wall, moved it to the side of the cot, and sat. He was low enough that he had to look slightly upward to meet her eyes. He did not mind that. "My name is Richard Callahan," he said. "I know who you are. The courthouse case was on the radio this morning." "You won." She looked at him over the particular stillness of a woman who has given enough of her life to careful attention that she no longer needs glasses to look over. "Tell me how my grandson saved your life." He told her the full version, not the short one. The palms raised on the courthouse steps, the name that started with Gar, the 911 call, the bomb squad, the federal agent, the $9 million embezzlement, the arrest at 4:53. He left out the exact dollar amount because that number had no relevance in this room. He left out the pride he had felt walking out of the courthouse that morning, because that was not relevant either. Estelle listened without interrupting. Her thumb moved in slow circles on the back of Micah's hand. When Richard finished, she looked at Micah. "Micah Jerome Gaines, you slept in that parking structure." "Only Sunday night, Grandma, when the shelter was full." "You told me you were on the floor inside." "I was. Then I went outside because the man near me was coughing, and you said catching things is bad right now." "I know what I said." She closed her eyes for 3 seconds. When she opened them, her voice was even. "All right." She looked at Richard. "Mr. Callahan, Mrs. Okafor has already looked at me in a certain way, and I've known that woman long enough to read her face. So you can say what you came to say." He said it plainly, without performance. "There was a private medical suite at St. Mark's Hospital, 4th floor, quiet, with a good window and a recliner beside the bed, large enough for Micah to sleep in, if he wanted. The attending physician had been told only that a patient with pulmonary complications would arrive at 7, and that the family was to be left in peace. There was no bill. He was not paying for gratitude. He was paying a debt, and the difference between those two things was something he needed her to understand. And when she came out of that hospital, and she would come out, there was a house on Barrow Street, East Side, 4 blocks from Emmeline Elementary School. It had belonged to his late sister. He had not been able to sell it. He had not been able to bring himself to do anything with it at all. It was furnished. It had a yard. It had a school 4 blocks away. It would be theirs. Not on loan, not in his name, not conditional on anything. Hers with the deed transferred and signed before the month ended. Caroline would file the paperwork immediately to ensure that no agency, no court, nothing would affect Micah's placement while Estelle was in the hospital recovering. Estelle listened to all of it. Her thumb kept moving in slow circles. When he finished, she said, "Mr. Callahan, I have 2 things to say." "All right." "The first is yes, to the hospital and to the house." She said it without drama. The way a woman speaks after a long night of thinking has already resolved itself. "I am too old to refuse a good thing on pride alone, and I have spent enough of this evening looking at my grandson's face to know that a woman who lets pride keep her grandson sleeping in parking structures is not a woman I intend to be." Something moved in Richard's throat that he kept behind his teeth. "The second thing," she said, "you are not going to make him into something. You are not going to put his face in a photograph for a benefit dinner. You are not going to bring cameras to his school. You are not going to tell this story anywhere your name is on the invitation." She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. "He is going to go to school 4 blocks from that house. He is going to get poor marks sometimes. He is going to forget you for months at a stretch, because that is what children do when they are finally safe enough to be children. And that is exactly as it should be. If you want to be in his life, you will be the old friend of the family who shows up to his birthday and does not make a speech." "I won't make a speech," Richard said. "You will help with college when the time comes. He is bright, brighter than most people are going to see at first, and he will need help when that day arrives." "Yes." "You will not buy him a car at 16. He can work for the car." "He can work for the car." She looked at him steadily for a long moment. The yellow curtain shifted in a draft from somewhere. The bare oak branches moved outside. "There is one more thing," Estelle said. Her voice was quieter now. 8 months ago, on a Tuesday in October, it was raining on Michigan Avenue. A woman was standing at a bus stop with a paper grocery bag coming apart in the wet. She looked at him without blinking. A man in a dark green coat stopped. He gave her his umbrella. He put her groceries in a cab and paid the driver and wouldn't take the change. My grandson was with me that day. She looked at Micah, half asleep against her shoulder. He talked about that man for a week. He said the man had a silver R on his briefcase clasp. When he saw your car in the parking structure, the blue car with the silver R near the back, he went very still and said, "Grandma, I think that's the same man." The evenness in her voice was the kind that is more affecting than anything larger. I told him I didn't remember the man's face clearly, but Micah did. Micah remembered. Richard did not speak for a moment. "You did not save us," Estelle said. "Last October, you gave a stranger your umbrella in the rain because it was raining and a woman was standing in it. That is all you did. My grandson held that in his mind for 8 months, and yesterday he used it to find you." She looked at him with the same clear measuring gaze she had fixed on him since he walked through the door. "The small things you did not think were important were the only things that were important. I want you to carry that." "I will," Richard said. "Good." She looked down at her book. "Now go find something to eat. You look like a man who hasn't eaten since morning and has been too busy to notice." He stood. He looked at Micah, who had fallen fully asleep against Estelle's shoulder with the red hoodie cuff pulled up over one hand. "We'll have the transport here within the hour," he said. "We'll be ready," Estelle said. She had already turned to her page. The private transport arrived at 7:15. White, unhurried, the two paramedics addressing Estelle as Mrs. Gaines and asking her permission before they touched her. They settled her into the wheelchair with the care of people who understood that dignity was not a small thing and had never let themselves forget it. Micah walked beside her down the hallway with one hand on the armrest. He did not let go in the elevator. He did not let go crossing the lobby. He did not let go until they reached the curb. At St. Mark's, the fourth-floor suite was warm, the recliner acceptable, and Dr. Elias, a quiet man in his mid-50s, introduced himself to Estelle first and asked before he began whether she would prefer a woman for her evening nurse. Estelle said yes. A woman came within 2 minutes. Richard stood in the hallway with Caroline while the medical team worked. Through the half-open door, he could see Micah testing the recliner, deciding it would do, and then pulling the red hoodie around himself like a blanket, even though a proper blanket was already folded at the foot of the chair. "He's not taking the hoodie off," Caroline said. "No," Richard said, "he's not." A nurse came out and gently pulled the door to. "She's stable. Antibiotics are running. Chest imaging in 20 minutes. The boy is welcome to stay. I'll bring him dinner around 8. "Thank you," Richard said. The nurse went back in. Caroline set her bag against the hallway wall. "The review," she said. "Thursday? Move it to tomorrow morning. 7 a.m. every account, every line." "Already done." I called from the car on the way to the shelter. She checked her phone. "Gareth Sloan is in federal custody as of 40 minutes ago." The man who placed the device gave his name before they finished reading him his rights. He gave other names too, which I expect will make tomorrow morning complicated for several people who don't yet know their morning is going to be complicated. Richard closed his eyes for a moment. "Caroline," he said, "how did I not see this?" "Because Gareth was very good at making himself invisible from the inside," she said. "That was the precise job you hired him to do. Manage everything around you so you didn't have to look at it directly. He did the job. He simply redirected some of the proceeds." A pause. "That's not an absolution. It's an accurate accounting of what happened." He almost found something resembling a laugh. "That's a generous read." "I don't give generous reads, you know that." Through the partly open door, Richard could see Micah's hand stretched out from the recliner, resting on top of Estelle's hand on the blanket, and Estelle's hand turning slowly to hold it without looking, the way a person holds a hand they have held 10,000 times in the dark. Richard stood in the hallway for a long time. He thought about the courthouse steps and the small figure with both palms raised and the word Gareth, and how close the entirety of his remaining life had come to ending on a Tuesday afternoon, on a piece of pavement he had crossed without looking 1,000 times before. He thought about October and a rain-soaked bus stop and a paper grocery bag, and how a gesture that had cost him $40 in 5 minutes had been held in the mind of a 6-year-old boy with the precision of a compass bearing. Quietly and exactly, for 8 months, until the moment arrived when it was the only thing that mattered. He did not go home that night. The federal team had advised against it. Caroline had advised against it more firmly. And there was, in any case, nowhere he particularly wanted to be. He slept 4 hours on a couch in the family lounge at the end of the hallway, shoes still on, and woke at 6 in the early gray light. He walked back. He opened the door an inch. Estelle Gaines was awake, sitting up against 2 pillows, the book open on the blanket, a little more color in her face than the night before. Micah was still asleep in the recliner, the red hoodie pulled to his chin, one canvas sneaker on and one dropped to the floor. Estelle saw Richard in the doorway. She raised one eyebrow, a single unhurried gesture. It was an invitation. He came in quietly and sat on the low footstool that someone had placed beside the bed. Neither of them spoke. Outside, through the window with its plain cotton curtain, the sky was the particular shade that arrives just before early light decides what it is going to be. The doctor came at 5:30, Estelle said, soft enough not to wake the boy. He says I'm responding well. He says in 2 days I'll be walking the hallway and in 2 weeks I'll be out. She paused. He was using his honest voice. I've been a nurse's assistant long enough to know the difference between honest and soft. That's good news, Richard said. It is. She looked at Micah for a long moment. Her hand moved slowly on top of the blanket. Mr. Callahan, I thought about what you said last night, about the house on Barrow Street. Yes. I want to ask you one thing before I say anything further. Go ahead. Your sister's house. You said you haven't been able to sell it. How long has it been empty? 3 years, Richard said. She passed in the spring 3 years ago. She left it to me. She didn't have children. Estelle was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry, she said. Thank you. She turned the thought over the way a person holds something they are deciding how to set down. A house that has been empty for 3 years is a house that needs people in it, she said. That's not charity. That's just the right use of a thing. That's what I believe too, Richard said. Then we're still agreed on everything we agreed to last night. We are. She picked up her book and found her page. The morning light was strengthening through the window, moving from gray toward a pale, tentative gold. The kind of light that arrives slowly in this city in the early days of spring, as if it is not yet certain it has permission to stay. In the recliner, Micah shifted. He did not wake. He pulled the red hoodie tighter around himself in his sleep, and his breathing was the deep, unconflicted breathing of a child who has done something hard and true and is now, at last, allowed to rest. Richard sat on the low stool in the quiet room, and he did not go anywhere at all.